Bwahaha! And he returns with a ba-bang. Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another Trek from Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We're on Volume 23, Extra Chapter, Geese and His Final Ally. Yes, the return of Badigadi. It has been so freaking long since we've seen Badigadi. It literally, like, the coolest character of this series, and we get literally none of him until finally, towards the very end. Ugh, it bugs the hell out of me. I love Badigadi. He's like my favorite character to portray, and just I have so much fun with his character, and he just has never been here. Just never been here. But yes, he's here. But anyways, I'm jumping ahead. I'm jumping ahead of here. But yes, welcome guys to the premiere Hey Chat. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great Monday after Mushoku Monday. Thank you guys so much for dropping by here and being a part of this. It makes what Mushoku Monday is what it is, and I greatly appreciate you guys' support, sharing it out with your friends so they can all join in as well. But yes, greatly appreciate, of course, everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. Last week we had Inferno Taurus with super, Sunset Baller with a super, Sergio Donna with 18 months. Thank you so much. Nathaniel with a super, Tristan with a super, and yes, as usual, coming in here, as usual, Gearless with a massive super. Thank you so much. Thank you. You guys are so freaking amazing. Oh, I cannot express enough. You guys are just too much. But anyways, that all said, yes, we have a great chapter to follow up and finish out 23. I'm pretty sure it's going to take an entire Mushoku Monday for that. I kind of mentioned that last week. It's like, man, that was like 2 really long chapters. This is a long chapter. I think it'll wrap up things nicely. Plus, yes, this chapter's got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to talk about. It's like I keep talking about this idea that I love how the revisionist history aspect of the story. Like, I think Refugin has a thing about revisionist history. This idea of, yeah, the victors always write the history books and how what people perceived is a truth, but versus those that have actually been there. I think that's the cool thing about this series because it does have, yes, it's a fantasy. You have people that have been around a long time. You have some people that'll pop up and say, hey, yeah, what you think is true is not. And this whole thing with Aldebaran, the dragon god and the demon god, all that kind of stuff has just been so retold so many times at this point. It's like now I'm starting to wonder who's actually telling the truth. But now, again, technically, spoilers for this chapter, we get a first account. Somebody that was there. Now, there's still an element there of like, did they see what they seen because they were technically not in their right mind? But I think we can pretty much put it to rest. We can finally put it to rest. Anyways, let's just get into it. Extra chapter, Geese and His Final Ally. And I hate this, by the way. I think this chapter, how it concludes kind of soured the whole volume. Like, we'll get into what my tier is for the actual volume at the very end, but I didn't like the conclusion. I will admit that I didn't like the conclusion, but we'll get there. There could still be something coming up, obviously. Geese found himself in Bagoa region in the Demon Continent, in a certain town's mayor's estate. There were men in the room, hammered, half naked. Geese was near the head honcho of the group, and he knew of his reputation, that he was out of Geese's league. He had spied him out, so he knew what his name was. Now, it wasn't as if they'd talked before. He was just aware of him, knew that he was out there in the world, doing something. Yeah, we already know at this point. Like, it was very quickly. I think it's the point which, yes, the hands. But obviously with the previous chapter, I kind of knew who this was going to be just because Kishinika kind of flagged it. Like, yeah, you're probably going to fight Badigadi. And then this final chapter is called Geese and His Final Ally. It's probably about Badigadi. And then talked about the arms. I'm like, yeah, it's him. Geese had been insinuating himself into the man's group lately, but hadn't gotten used to being around them. His knees were still knocking. Still a coward. Bwah, bwah, bwah. I can finally do it. I missed it. I missed my bwahas. The man was energetically necking his drink, 6 arms clutching a whole barrel of his ale, knocking it back and swallowing. The way that he guzzled suggests that he wasn't paying any attention to the taste. Geese felt like it was a waste. You're in a fine mood. Geese approached the man. Having finished his drink, the man tossed it off into the distance before looking to Geese. Bwahaha. Yeah, I am. He only offered a response before peeling his eyes off of Geese. Bwahaha. Give me another drink. I've taken a liking to your ale. A real vintage. Bwahaha. He was obviously not interested in him, but Geese knew a way that would get his attention. So, have you heard of the man god? Just come out and say it. Hey, by the way, you know this man god guy? Oh, man. The man's laughter stopped, and his eyes snapped to Geese. You, where'd you hear that name? Same place as you, in a dream. Oh, really? Head over to Renoa Kingdom University of Magic. You'll find someone with a deep connection to the man god there. Bwahaha. It's so sad. It's like he's referring to the last time he's seen Rudius and the last time that we've literally seen him. I'm still mad that he's been so gone in this series. Geese knew that he must be referring to the boss. True, if Geese was connected to the man god and wanted a way out, that would be the right place for it. That's interesting to actually point that out. He says, reasonable bit of advice. Geese right here acknowledges that this guy's telling the truth. If I know the man god, I'm probably going to want a way out. If I want a way out, that's the guy, because it seems like he's doing just fine pushing back. Very interesting there. It is kind of interesting to have here that technically Badigadi is assuming that Rudius would push away from that. That if you wanted a way out, go to Rudius. How does Badigadi at this point know that Rudius is trying to not affiliate with the man god? Or is this just Geese assuming that? It's very interesting. Nope, I've got business with you. Wah, what? I'm aligning myself with the man god. We're fighting the dragon god. Join us. Oh. Going back to my Badigadi Kool-Aid man impression. His whole posture changed. His jovial grin turned to something serious. It was a startling shift, considering this guy was a perpetually cheerful, jolly guy. Again, we're going right back into similar with Kishirika. She's always goofy and then suddenly, oh.
If that's what you want, let me tell you something. Consider advice. Go on. If you align yourself with that man god, one day you'll destroy what's most precious to you with your own hands. Get out while you can.
Yep, I know. I followed his advice before, and it led me to destroy my entire homeland.
Just no hesitation. He stared at Geese blankly.
Your homeland? And you still follow the guy?
Guess I do, yeah.
This must be what it's like to watch someone change their mind about you. Geese felt him regarding him, suddenly, as an interesting figure. A curiosity that Geese felt he liked.
You destroyed your homeland with your own hands and you felt nothing?
Nah, nothing like that. It was a real shock for me. How should I put it? It was only once it was too late, once things were already out of my hands, that I realized all of a sudden, I didn't hate the place. I thought of my family and siblings as nothing but scum, I'll admit. But then I realized I never wanted them to die. I was all regret. What have I done? I couldn't even bring myself to stand for days.
You still keep following him. It had been several years after he first started taking the man god's advice and set off to travel when it all went down. It happened before he met Paul and the others. When he was an adventurer, desperate for money, the man god had advice for him to offer information to a certain guy. It was different from his usual advice, phrased more like a request. Geese did feel like something was a little hinky about it. Still, he did exactly what he was told, offered the information, netted himself a handsome reward for his troubles. It wasn't even that much money. Seemed like it at the time, but it was only enough to go a month without work. Didn't matter to Geese, though. He was pleased as hell. He took the money, marched to a pub, and treated everyone to drinks. Next day, it all went to That day, he discovered that the information he handed over provoked a Demon King's wrath. The Demon King was a generally mild-mannered guy. It kind of insinuates later on that this might have been Badigadi. Rather than information went to Badigadi. But everyone had a secret they didn't want to get out. Well, the info passed on related directly to that secret. The Demon King traced the leak to the demon of the Nuka tribe. The Demon King went straight for the clan's settlement and massacred everyone. No mercy, none. Men and women, elderly and children. Indiscriminate slaughter. Not even the Demon King survived his own massacre. The intel passed on was a key to killing off this Demon King. The man who bought the intel sold it off, and the buyers killed the Demon King. Geese was the only survivor. It was a shock. He wept, wailed, lamented. Why was he such an idiot? Why did he trust the man god? Well, this is like one of those aspects of I can see him sort of blaming himself for the situation because obviously it led to the death of them. But it's one of those aspects of it's not entirely your fault, but you can't help but feel the guilt of it because you were technically a stepping stone for that whole process. But again, it goes back to that whole idea of then why? Then why? When you got nothing, again, it goes back to that whole idea. If you got nothing, who cares? What was the man god's response to all this? He mocked Geese and laughed.
Pretty awful, right? He made me experience the worst possible thing imaginable. Then he kicked me in the guts when I was down.
And you trust this man god after all that, Blah, you're an interesting man.
Right? I get that a lot.
Geese thought there was another man alive who'd fallen into the depths of despair and still clung to the man god in spite of it. Gonna find that out here in a minute. Rudius hadn't done that. Neither the guy Geese was speaking to now. Sure.
I think you're pretty interesting yourself.
Oh. Though Geese was skeptical from everything that he had heard until now, he started to suspect this guy wasn't like Rudius. He seemed like Geese's kind of guy, to be honest.
It's not like I know the details, but you've got a girl you're interested in, right?
I do. We're engaged.
But you weren't able to spit out what you felt about her, is that right?
Got me there.
You only managed to tell her thanks to the man god, right? You owe him, right?
There was a pause.
Now that you mention it, I suppose I haven't paid him back. Why not pay back that debt you owe by lending us your strength now? Not a bad deal, right?
It felt pretty risky considering the guy could crush Geese into a ball with his bare hands. His interest was more on Rudius' side after all. Geese bet that he could understand the pain that came from following the man god's advice, only to watch your most precious things stomped into the dirt. At the same time, Geese bet that he could comprehend how he felt too. Geese had been robbed of one thing that was most precious to him, but he'd gotten off without losing the most precious thing of all. He was pretty sure this man was just like him. Although he'd been deceived like many others before, he was the only one who remained, because in the end, he's still gotten his hand on what he wanted most of all. This is kind of an interesting way of looking at it. It's kind of a little bit jarbled here because I'm changing it from first person to third person, but essentially what it's saying is that Geese feels that he sort of feels a similarity to Badigadi right here, because Badigadi, although he lost everything with what happened with him and the man god, he still retained the one thing that he loved the most, Kishirika. Now, yes, it's because Kishirika is able to still live. There's still an element here that he did technically kill Kishirika, it's just that she came back because she's, the immortal demon empress, yada yada. Whereas Geese is a similar thing here. He's saying, I'm similar as well because I lost everything, but I kept the one thing most precious to me, myself. For Geese, the only thing that he cares about is himself. That's why he works for the man god, is because the man god keeps him alive. He would die. He doesn't have anything else. He's lost everything else. So there's an element here that they kind of seem similar. Rudius is different. Rudius is afraid of losing what's precious to him, and his future self lost all that stuff, so he got to see firsthand and through the diary what that causes. I don't want to be that. I don't want that to happen to me. I can't do this. Now, we did get to see where Rudius did lose everything, but he didn't technically lose everything. He lost Roxy, and then he slowly started losing everything else over time, but he still retained some things. There's a question mark. If Rudius lost everything, would he have ended up like them too? I don't think so. I think Rudius would be so ticked off. And I think Badigadi is obviously an odd case, and Geese is his own odd case. I like the fact that we are technically seeing three different situations where the man god robs somebody of everything and how they react to it. The future Rudius, Badigadi, and Geese.
Not a bad deal. I do have an obligation to lend my aid to man god.
Yeah, you do, don't you?
But I refuse.
Huh? Why?
You.
He thrusts all four of his index fingers at Geese.
Bohahaha. It would wound my reputation as Demon King if I were to let myself be won over by word tricks and a little guilt.
Geese snapped his mouth shut. He knew this guy was one of them, one of the immortal demons. His long lifespan gave him a funny preoccupation with reputation, agreements, whatnot, stubborn about his own self-enforced rules.
My name is the immortal Demon King Badigadi. If you want to fight next to me, you need to defeat me first.
This was the immortal Demon King Badigadi. This is what it finally reveals what we all kind of figured from the very beginning of this chapter. He was the Demon King who bestowed wisdom. His sister, Etoph, bestowed power. She could only be forced to submit by someone stronger than her. In contrast, Badigadi would only capitulate to someone if they showed they had a little cunning.
Fine, all right, I'll take you on.
A contest of wits? Bahahaha. What nonsense are you talking about? What would be the purpose of such a contest?
Crap. It was a fist fight he was after. Geese had no choice. He wondered if he should bring someone else to fight for him.
Not much glory found in beating down a puny guy like me, though, eh? Or do you really think that'd add to your honor as a Demon King?
Of course not. It's a Demon King's duty to give a fighting chance to potential heroes.
But, okay, then, what kind of contest are you looking for?
The man pulled over another cask of ale.
This, from the looks of you, I bet you quite a heavy drinker.
I enjoy a drop.
So it was a drinking contest. Geese wasn't all that good at holding his liquor. He liked it more than Talahan, yes, but not enough to brag about. That's pretty crazy to be more than a dwarf. I'm sorry. Badigadi had about 10 empty casks strewn about. Taking that into account, no, Geese couldn't get his hopes up. This man was an immortal demon. He probably had unlimited capacity to drink. He was like a bottomless pit. Geese wouldn't win.
Well, have you chickened out? Or are you the type that agrees to a challenge only when you can win?
Nah, more like I don't bother with challenges that I know I ain't gonna win.
It's not that I only take challenges that I will win. It's just that I don't take ones that I know that I'm going to lose.
Bruce Greyrat was different. He didn't flinch at a fight. He let out a loud laugh and suddenly slung his Imperator spell at me. Of course, I still beat him.
I wouldn't want you painting boss and me in the same brush, you know? Unlike him, I wasn't handed any talents.
I like this part.
What's all that about not taking on a challenge you can't win and having no talent? You think Rudy's Greyrat was that confident at the time? That he threw himself into every single battle, feeling like he'd be protected by his own talents?
Yeah, Badigadi knew, like, firsthand through, yes, his fight with him, his duel, and yes, afterwards, with him training him, that yes, Rudius was very fragile. Badigadi knows about the fact that he can't produce a battle aura, which I'm kind of wondering if that's going to come up. He knows that Rudius can't produce a battle aura. So he knows that Rudius knows how fragile he is. He knows he's a glass cannon. And yes, based on the duel where he keeps saying, please don't kill me, please don't hit me. Geese thought back to the teleportation labyrinth. Boss had more confidence than Geese, to be sure, but he quaked with anxiety a few times. The slip-up he made at the end nearly destroyed him completely. Roxy had forced him back on his feet, but it was close. He had improved as time went on, but he still carried Paul's death like a weight. Geese was willing to bet that he had no illusions of being able to win if he faced Orsted either. Rudius barely held his own against the Hydra, but Orsted could have trounced that monster one-handed. That is one thing that I'm kind of curious about, because, like, for Rudius, his biggest challenges and fights have been so far is, yes, like, Atof and whatnot, but it's like, yeah, it was technically, like, true-on battles, like, fight to the death, was the Hydra and Orsted. With Atof, it was technically supposed to be a duel, but those were the two cases where he was fighting something extremely powerful with the hopes to kill it, and the reverse, technically. And to have this kind of, I think most people would probably agree, like, yeah, Orsted would easily kill the Hydra, but, like, one-handed, I can see it. I can see him just chop, 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 chop. He can't really donut it to death, but he might have been able to, yeah, he'd probably be able to donut it to death. Pierce those scales with his fist. Because, again, it'd be a fighting style, it wouldn't be magic. The whole problem with the Hydra was magic.
You guys too, eh? There's some battles that you can't win just by manipulating things from safety of the shadows. Sometimes you gotta put your life on the line to gamble on your chance at victory. I know it. There was a time when I didn't, which is why I ended up losing everything. So I learned. I've honed my body, chugged all kinds of alcohol, and made battalions of friends. Bah! I wish I could show you the puny nobody I used to be.
Geese only knew what this Demon King was like, based on what the man god told him. Still, lack of intel aside, there was one thing that Geese was certain of. For a Demon King, a contract was absolute. This contest wasn't impossible. It was just a drinking competition. If he could nab a win, the Demon King would honor his promise. He'd become the man god's stooge and Geese's puppet. This guy, who faced and bested a dragon god way back in historical times, would be at the beck and call of Geese. Geese, Nukadia, the man god's little yes man, the guy who picked the bones off of other people's lives to get by. Another one of those aspects of, like, I'm so dirt, and I'm going to have the beck and call of somebody as powerful as him. Fine. If it wasn't a battle of the fists, it wasn't impossible.
You gotta fight. Hope you're up for getting crushed, Demon King. Bah! That's the spirit. Come then. Show me what you got. You better not forget your promise. The rest of you, bring us more ale.
With terms set, everyone around them erupted in excitement. Tug along by the men around them, Geese was pushed into his chair. Scanning the area, there was heaps of unconscious bodies that challenged Badigadi before. It was 5 in total, but probably more somewhere else. The man had to be pretty tanked, but Geese was still questioning himself.
Go on then. You have the first cup.
Bottoms up.
Yeah, knock it back.
One down. It went down easy. He could down this stuff almost endlessly. Still, based on the bodies on the floor, they must have thought the same thing.
Bah! Those were fools. All of them. Thinking they could challenge an immortal Demon King like myself at a drinking contest.
Has anyone ever beat you at this before?
Yes.
Second tankard went down easy.
Whew. You gonna tell me the name of this fella?
That should be obvious. It was the Demon World's great emperor, Kishirika Kishirishu.
Give me a break. She don't count.
Bah! A win is a win, and a loss is a loss.
She was Badigadi's fiancée. During the Second Great Human-Demon War, the two of them were master and servant relationship. It was probably a good bet Badigadi had purposely lost to her as a show of difference.
You mean to tell me that you lost in a fair fight?
Yep, you have just as much of a chance. It'd make a good story for the last surviving Nukadia to beat me.
Geese narrowed his eyes at him.
Why do you know that?
Bah! I know the people of my region. I know which clans have recently been snuffed out.
Fourth tankard down. It was delicious and went down smooth.
Geese Nukadia, what do you consider to be a fair fight?
That's a weird question. I'd say it's exactly the way that you put it before. No losing on purpose, no holding back, and continuing until one side's the clear victor, right?
Yes, exactly.
Geese took his fifth tankard. He felt like he could still do this.
But victory is a vague concept. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. There are a lot of losers out there who act like they've won something.
Bah! See, you get it.
Sixth tankard. The edges of Geese's vision were blurring, but he was still in the game.
Think for a moment. What's victory mean to you?
Victory?
This wasn't good. The ale was delicious. It was delicious enough to chug without thinking. Proof-wise, it was still more potent than Austrian wine. It was on par with Renoa's hard liquor, or the ale the dwarves served. It was hard to notice thanks to the flavor. But this was a drink for people who wanted to get hammered quick. Oops. Yeah, when I seen the dwarves part, typically with dwarves, it's usually very strong stuff. Geese calmed himself. He had to slow his pace, or he'd lose. He couldn't afford to be defeated here. Win or lose, He couldn't let things end here. There's that ending thing again. Geese is obsessed with that ending thing. Can't end here.
Yep, you got it. Think about it long and hard.
Think about the victory? What was victory to Geese? What did he have to do to win? Drink Badigadi to a stupor? No, that wasn't what he was after. There had to be something else. Some other reason why he was having this contest.
Here you go, number 8.
Geese couldn't remember number 7. Something was coming into focus. This was a battle of wits to Badigadi. He wanted Geese drunk, then challenge him to scrape himself together and talk him into something. The important thing wasn't trying to outdrink Badigadi. He wanted Geese to know the deeper game was to get him to admit defeat. Geese had realized that he'd been sprinkling hints at ways to achieve his victory throughout the conversation. This was a game, one which Geese had to follow hints, to find appropriate words and guess correctly, as if he could remember the words that were coming out of Badigadi. He was messing with Geese, making him guzzle strong ale and making him think. This is interesting because, yes, there's a whole side of it to the idea of, like, Badigadi, bestowing wisdom. Is he trying to teach Geese something? Would he allow himself to be defeated if Geese were to learn the trick here? To be more cunning than Badigadi would be the way of winning? I don't know. There's a side of this whole thing where it's more of Geese getting drunk and just losing all focus on what the hell's going on right now. He's been drinking too much.
You trying to keep me dancing for your entertainment? That it, huh?
Bah, the palm of my hands are quite large, so they should be easy to dance on.
Who do you think you're talking to, huh? The one who'll be dancing before this is through is you. On the palm of my hand.
9th tanker down the hatch.
Well said. But goodness, it looks like your body is starting to sway before mine.
Oh, shut it.
When the 10th tankard came, his hand was shaking. Geese knew that if he swallowed it down, he'd definitely vomit. That didn't stop him. No choice. If he gave up, he wasn't going to be able to beat Rudius. Unable to withstand all the alcohol, his stomach began to contract. His head felt like it was spinning around, clenching his jaw, trying to hold it in. But something sour crawled up into his mouth. He kept his lips clamped shut, but it rushed through his nose instead. He retched. What came out had no form, all fluid, creating a disgusting puddle on the floor. The men surrounding scrunched their faces in disgust as they broke into applause, as they fawned over the Demon King and his victory.
Bah, the end of our match then.
Geese was down on all fours, saliva dripping from his chin as he stared at the pile beneath him. Everything felt awful. His whole body. He had lost, utterly and completely. He was a loser. Forcing his head up, he could see the Demon King standing as dignified as ever as he approached. He wore a triumphant look on his face. As Geese averted his eyes, he couldn't believe the Demon King had defeated him. Sure, he knew there was no avenue of victory from the outside, but somewhere deep down, Geese knew there was some way to win. That if they were just doing a drinking contest, he had a chance. But then it dawned on Geese. Geese took his seat and grabbed his 11th tankard.
Who made a rule that if you vomit, you lose, huh?
Badigadi's face went blank for a moment. He was completely taken aback. He soon grinned and sat himself down.
Nobody did.
Time for round 2. Had to find some little gimmick in there. Just had to find some little gimmick in there. But again, that goes back to the whole idea of cunning. If he's more cunning than him, he can get around it. It's a very stupid and simple cunning thing, but whatever. I'd argue it's a very stupid little caveat, but whatever. That'd be like saying nobody said you had to keep actually drinking to keep in the contest, so he can just sit there and wait for the drunkenness to go away. He's forgot how many tankards he had down and how many times he had vomited. Midway, he started retching between each tankard that he drank. His body was past its limits. He knew that. Consciousness, in, out, vision, blurry, memories disjointed. He couldn't even speak, merely moan. He became a machine, robotically grabbing the next tankard and downing it. It was a miracle that he hadn't passed out. I would assume at some point you're going to have some alcohol poisoning happening.
Bah, bah, bah.
Through the haze of his drunken stupor, Badigadi's hearty laughter faded in and out. Geese stopped hearing the crowd cheering and jeering a while back. It felt like he was in the middle of a dream. But when did Badigadi fall over sideways? No. Geese had crap.
If you keep this up, my lord, he's going to die.
I didn't peg him for the type to go this far.
What shall we do with him?
Use detoxification magic on him and lay him down over there.
What about your match?
Bah, for a coward like him to put his life on the line, that's heroic. I have no choice but to admit defeat. Being a hero doesn't necessarily mean being physically strong, does it? Bah.
I hate it. I hate this. Is a whole stupid reason he's gonna be fighting freaking Rudius. Geese managed to make out a short exchange before consciousness sank. A Badigadi perspective. Bam! I don't think we've ever had a Badigadi perspective. Like, specifically Badigadi perspective. I think we had a third-person perspective of only him when he was traveling over to see Rudius, but I don't think we've ever had on Badigadi perspective, him specifically. So, interesting. Now, a little inside baseball here. I have to be honest. When I was doing the outline segment right here, I didn't really want to condense this too much because this is technically Badigadi speaking and telling his story. So like typically with like quoted stuff, I don't like to condense it because I want to keep a lot of possible hidden context in there. And I did at the time plan on doing Badigadi's voice for this entire thing. I can't. I can't. It's going to kill my throat if I try to do this entire segment with Badigadi's voice. So I apologize beforehand. I'll still do the blah-ha-ha-has, but I'm not going to voice the entire thing with Badigadi's voice. A perfect opportunity. Allow me to talk about the past a little. I'm going to tell you about a guy who thought that he was clever. Wrongly. Everyone around him was a complete moron. So he'd been misled. His companions, his older sister, whose power was nothing compared to his own, by the way. Interesting that he's more powerful than Etoff, and even the monarch that he and his peers were supposed to love and respect. Everyone around him lacked any sense. It was only natural that he assumed he had the wits. Interesting, like there, like everybody's dumb, so he thinks that he's really smart. But like he says here in a minute, yeah, compare yourself to a bunch of idiots, you're not much. You see, everyone in his tribe was, as a rule, an idiot. What made him different was that he tried to expand his intelligence. He understood the logic behind certain things, could correctly predict what people were thinking, and was skilled at uncovering the solution to problems. The man's father called him the prodigy of prodigies, born only once in 10,000 years. He was given the epithet Demon King of Wisdom. No wonder he thought he was clever. What's that? You would argue that if he was really more clever than everyone that he knew, then he wasn't wrong. Now, that's an assumption. Think about it for a moment. If one man in the sea of fools is just a little smarter than the rest of them, can you really say that he's clever? No, you can't. The fact that he didn't see it himself proves that he wasn't such a genius. We're getting off track. I'm telling a story here. At the time, humans and demons were locked in a conflict that was later called the Second Great Human-Demon War. It was little more than a skirmish when compared to the later Laplace War. Our long lifespans make us demons a patient lot, so our invasions are slow-paced. We are laid back even when it comes to losing the pivotal battles in war, thereby giving the humans the time to recover and rally against us once more. Winning a battle is less important than winning the overall war. That's a very interesting thing, because we kind of know this several times before, this idea that the demons, especially the immortal demon kings, are very long-lived. And yes, all the other demons are very long-lived compared to humans. So they see the span of time differently. They feel differently about, 2 years versus what a human would feel with 2 years. So it does make sense, the idea that they would, be patient, they'd wait things out, they're not rushing or whatever, and then suddenly, oh crap, they're back already, and is their children? Their children are already ready for reinforcements? That's weird. Our hero joined the Demon King army, where he was given a position of tactical advisor. He saw how his people were engaged in a war and was dismayed. Things couldn't continue like this. If they really wanted to win, they needed to commit more aggressive offense, to take key locations in the enemy territory. What do you know? No one wanted to listen to him. They were all idiots after all, unable to understand the logic of war. Blah. Anyways, one day, yes, I'm being vague, but it wasn't a special day otherwise. It was out of the blue. Really. Or was it? Maybe something had happened to precipitate the event, but our protagonist wasn't bright enough to figure out the cause. Anyways, one day, the man started having a recurring dream. A person appeared in it, one whose gender was indiscernible, whose very appearance was as indistinct as a shadow, barely a wisp of a dream. The person called themselves the man-god, quite literally, the god of the humans. The man immediately asked why the god had come to see him. Was it to kill him? The god said, "I'm a god, you realize. Everyone who lives in this world is like a child to me. I would never dream of killing you. In fact, seeing how hard you've been working, I'd like to help you out." So, a lunatic. The man was naturally suspicious of this god, but the god still offered him a small word of advice before disappearing. Inconsequential, easy-to-follow advice. He said, send some troops, even a few would be fine, to the Galgal Ruins. Man, the Galgal Ruins, we're going way back to the Galgal Ruins, way back at Volume 7. Now, our protagonist was serious to a fault. He knew there was a Demon King already situated in those ruins with his troops. He didn't see much need to send extra troops, since it hardly seemed like a vulnerable position. But he nonetheless followed his advice and he deployed some troops there. When he arrived, it was a shocking sight. The Gaga ruins had already turned into a battlefield. The demons found themselves outnumbered, but the humans hadn't expected the man to arrive with reinforcements. He hadn't brought many with him, but they were just enough to topple the enemy's formation. The man wound up saving the Demon King army's most central Demon King. The victory bolstered his influence. It was a dream from here. Yeah, there's a couple things to remember right here. Is that if this is the beginnings, obviously, of the Second Great Human-Demon War, this is the point in which the continent is still one. Like, all this is still one continent. So it's just, like, really traveling straight across there. Secondly, yes, this Demon King specifically, if I remember correctly, was the one that had the ability to kind of very powerful earth magic. And so he was tunneling underneath formations or fortifications and whatnot, building his castles underground. The man manipulated the Demon King army from behind the scenes with his cleverness. He assumed control of the human territories at an alarming speed. He also curried favor with the beast folk, who were considered a subset of the demons at the time, and convinced them to join hands with the demons. Those weren't the only allies that he won over, though. The man even managed to bring the sea people into the fold. Together, their army steadily gained territory. Now, this is actually answering a whole bunch of questions from way back there, that history book that Reeves was going through in, like, Volume 3. In Volume 3, it kind of goes through all these things, and they're like, they gathered all this stuff, and they were getting all these people. It's like, holy crap, this is literally Badigadi. It was Badigadi probably through the man god's advice. Now, it doesn't say right here the man god's telling him to do all this stuff, but you assume that's through his stuff. He's saying the Demon King army is saying that the man is using his cleverness to do all this stuff, but the assumption is that he's gaining all this knowledge from the man god. Together, their army steadily gained territory. It was only a matter of time until the humans were wiped out completely. The man was so grateful to the god. Thanks to that god, our protagonist would soon be able to avenge his great and noble father. It never happened. I remember like it just happened moments ago. The strategy our protagonist had come up with was flawless. There hadn't been a single hole in it. Reflecting back, I'm exaggerating a little. My memory isn't perfect. One thing still escapes me. What I can tell you is this. The man's plan was perfect, and if it had succeeded, the man could have established a bridgehead to Astra Kingdom. The humans would have nowhere left to run. Victory was certain. That was how perfect it was. Then, one crucial aspect failed. It was strange. His army was superior in raw numbers and strength. In fact, he and his troops had a better grasp of how crucial this battle was. The humans were oblivious. That was precisely why the fortress the demons attempted to invade had so few people guarding it. These facts assured the man he couldn't lose. And yet, he did. It was a massacre. People throw that word around, but I mean it. It wasn't clean. It wasn't neat. They all died, and every death was a nasty kind. There wasn't a single survivor. The man was horrified when he saw the gory aftermath. His men numbered over 10,000, but they had all been butchered. He couldn't begin to fathom how the slaughter had happened. The only thing clear was that it seemed to be almost entirely the work of one single human. It was the same brutal technique over and over again. The man realized a tremendous monster had been born amongst the humans. Or, from their perspective, a hero, I guess. During the first Great Human-Demon War, a similar human had appeared and expelled the demons with an overwhelming might. Our foolish protagonist had heard the story, which was how he recognized the culprit this time was similar. There was a turning point. After that, no matter what the man did, nothing went right. The hero would interfere and impede every last plan he made. It was all that hero's fault. You ask how he knew? No. It's explained easily enough. Not all those troops were killed in every battle, so he was able to gather information from the survivors. He discovered the humans weren't even quite sure what the hero of theirs was. He was a man clad in golden armor who appeared suddenly in battle to lead the humans to victory. That was the only intel that he had. People called the man Golden Knight Aldebaran. Aldebaran commanded such overpowering might that he could completely turn the tide of battle, giving the humans their momentum. It was ridiculous. No matter how much our guy racked his intelligence, no matter how complex and well thought out his plan, he was always overcome by the human hero's unsurpassable strength. Yeah, already right here, I'm already kind of drawing the conclusion that this was all kind of a setup by the man god. That obviously the man god, from Badigadi's perspective, yeah, the man god's helping me. He's telling me all this stuff. He's telling me exactly what to do. And we're just about to finish the humans. And then suddenly out of nowhere, this Aldebaran guy shows up. The humans don't even know where the hell this dude came from. It kind of implies the idea that humans don't even know who this person is. They call him the Golden Knight Aldebaran, but they say that they don't know what he is, where he came from. They just know that he's wearing this golden armor. It kind of gives me the impression they don't even know what he looks like. They don't even know what this dude looks like. He's just showing up out of nowhere and he's beating the crap out of everybody. And the humans are like, cool. All right, cool. Let's go. Aldebaran, yay. But again, kind of interesting to kind of get this perspective right now because of, again, how it sort of plays out the history books and how it's been written. People call it the Second Great Human-Demon War, but it was an overstatement to say. The war really was just between the demons and the man, Aldebaran. It's not like a great human-demon war. It's literally the great one singular human demons war. The human demons war. Midway through the whole conflict, the man stopped bothering with his armor at all. He still managed to overpower us. That's interesting because when I got to this point, I started to obviously question, is this armor the fighting god armor? Is this magic armor? Is he wearing golden magic armor and beating the crap out of them? And that would make me believe that he himself is a weakling. Like, what are the chances that the man god says, hey, Billy Bob, farmer that has no power, you'll never beat anything. Go get this armor and you'll save your people. And he's like, I'm weak though. I'm not powerful. No, just wear that. It's good. And he puts on a magic armor and suddenly he's strong and he's able to take things out. But I will admit that, yes, technically earlier, he did state that it was the same technique over and over and over again. Like he was using the same ability over and over again. Like they were all dying the same way, which makes me believe they just have one attack style or something like that. It was the same brutal technique over and over again. Interesting. Midway through the whole conflict, the man stopped bothering with his armor at all. He still managed to overpower us. And I guess there's a chance that using the armor itself, it infused the mana within him. Because it talks about that later on. This is a magic armor that infuses with magic. Not that it's being fueled by magic or mana. The demons couldn't win against Aldebaran. Our protagonist lost every major battle after that. The human army drove his forces back until they were routed to the demons' last bastion of defense, Kishidisu Castle. Back then, our demon hero had a strong sense of duty. He was convinced it was entirely his fault that they were in this current mess. He had lost so many brave demon kings. His sister, one of the strongest of all the demon kings, it was even rendered powerless in the course of it all. They had lost all their current territory they had conquered in the course of the war. All of it was his fault. Oh, how presumptuous he had been. That wasn't true in hindsight. There was no need for him to feel so responsible for losing to such a powerful adversary. What he should have done was to cut his losses and run like the rest of the demon kings, hunkering down in his region and eking out a quiet life. Guilt didn't change much. The war was over, and the demon army fell to pieces. It was only a matter of time before the humans took all the demons' territory from them. It was then that a woman that our protagonist had always thought the most foolish of all said to him, "This isn't your fault. I will take care of the rest. Stop troubling yourself." I was going to do Kishirika's like very small voice, but this should be when she's actually full formed.
It's not your fault. I will take care of the rest. Stop troubling yourself.
She was the monarch he and the others were supposed to love and respect. An uninhibited free spirit who lived exactly the way that she wanted to. The man was openly hostile to her.
Bwahaha. But deep down, you see, he was madly in love.
Why had the demon king of wisdom pushed himself past his limits as a tactical advisor? Love, of course. To make this woman he beloved happy. It was only at the end of it all that he realized this truth. That was when he prayed to the god. Please, help this woman. Help us demon folk. I'll do anything in return. I swear. And that's when it's over. That very night, after he said that prayer, the unsettling being appeared in the dream once more. He still couldn't tell whether this being was male or female, nor could he discern any of its features. But the god grinned at him and waved his hand, almost like an old friend flagging him down from the side of the road. "Hey-ya! Got you right where I want ya!" The man was naturally wary. Why did this god, a human god, arrive to the answer the prayers of a demon like him? As if to answer his doubts, the god said, "Aldebaran is a terrible fighting god, you see. I'm at as much of a loss about this as you. At the rate things are going, your beloved queen and the rest of the demons will meet a grim fate." There was something odd about that in hindsight. Why would the human god be troubled by something as trivial as the extinction of the demon race? But the man was too desperate to listen to his better judgment. He was grasping at straws for anything to turn this all around. Yeah, right here, technically, it is finally, well, at least, again, if the man god's telling the truth, we keep jumping around to whose perspective is here and what the actual story is. Right here, it's saying Aldebaran is the fighting god. So at least according to the man god, I don't know why he would do this. If it's the man god that's talking here, why would he say, like, oh, yeah, that's definitely the fighting god? What would he care in the situation? to label it a fighting god. So right here, I would probably assume this is a confirmation. Yes, Aldebaran was the fighting god. That was his armor. And yes, of course, later on we find out, they borrow the fighting god's armor, adorns it, and goes and fights. And of course, we get into where it was and everything like that, which I have my theories on.
What should I do?
The man god's lips curled into a smarmy, conniving smile. Follow my exact instructions. So the man set off on a journey. It was hard to believe now, but he was frail at the time. He wasn't an immortal demon, so he walked without rest or sleep. He weaved his way right through the human army, passed through over 10 forests, crossed over 5 rivers, and climbed over 3 whole mountains. Then, finally, he delved into the very depths of a labyrinth that no longer exists. That was where he found it, a single purple-colored vial. It had been an ordinary medicine once, but the thick mana permeating the labyrinth had altered it. This is a special anti-demon eye elixir. If you drink that, no demon eye will ever be able to see you. Perhaps this had been something originally intended to fall into the hands of another of the human's heroes. It could have created a second on the level of Aldebaran. The elixir would have created a weakness in the most powerful leader of the demons, Emperor Kishirika Kishisu. The elixir's effects would continue into their death. Knowing that, the man gulped it down. Then he began running again. He passed through endless deep valleys, a blizzarding meadow, and at the end, he climbed the world's largest mountain. Okay, first of all, a medicine that has been infused with mana through the labyrinth. Again, we always mention the idea that the labyrinth itself creates magic items because it draws in mana and it goes through objects, and eventually those objects turn to magic items. And so what this is implying is that, maybe somebody dropped a medicine at some point, and then over time, over many years, the mana flowing through it eventually altered it in some way. And yes, I can totally see a possibility of the man god knowing what this thing is and what it would actually do. Maybe look into the future somebody knowing that they eventually came across it, drank it, and it caused this effect. Now, the interesting thing is kind of wonder, because it was like a theory a long time ago, the idea that I wonder if the man god is using something similar to an eye of foresight. That would kind of goes into my theory that I had a long time ago, that the possibility that the man god is Rudius, that if he's Rudius of the future or something like that, is somebody that is able to push that eye even further, and thus that's his ability to see things. But that doesn't necessarily connect it to the idea of disciples and whatnot, and only being able to see the future of 3 individuals, his disciples, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, side this point, which kind of makes you wonder, if this is something that makes you unseen by the demon eye, how would the man god be able to still see him unless he just can't see his future anymore once he drinks the eye? But the idea here is that he drinks this, and yes, as we see in a little bit, this right here was for the sole sake of being able to use it against Laplace, which is kind of interesting. Kind of indicates the idea that, of course, Laplace having a demon eye. And it's funny that the man god goes out of his way to explain it. This is an anti-demon eye elixir. If you drink that, no demon eye will be able to see you. Why would the man god tell him that it's to use it against somebody else? Why wouldn't he say to just pour it out? He's literally telling Badigadi, you need to drink this so that you can't be seen by Kishirika. What for? Well, yeah, Badigadi comes to the conclusion that it's so that nobody else uses it, and you have another person like Aldebaran that will be able to fight against Kishirika. But why do you drink it? Obviously, this is kind of foreshadowing you're going to eventually have to fight against somebody that has a demon eye. It's kind of funny that it doesn't really click for him right here. But again, we're foolish. We're all foolish. But yes, he climbs the world's largest mountain. And again, this is at the point where it's all one continent. But I would still assume at this point, unless there was something in the center of that continent that got destroyed, this has to be what is now the Divine Continent. That is my assumption, because of everything we've kind of scaled and shown and talked about, the Divine Continent has been the one thing throughout this entire story that is literally the tallest. This thing is massive. And so this makes me believe that he went to the Divine Continent, or what is today the Divine Continent. It was there that he found the second thing he was looking for. A suit of golden armor. It glittered from head to toe, but it didn't look ridiculous. No, this armor was sinister, with the power to bewitch all who gazed upon it. This fearsome armor had been hidden within such a steep mountain, sealed away far out of sight. Whoever dons this armor will have incredible power, the god had told him. This, I'm wondering, it's, again, for sure gotta be in the Divine Continent. Now, my curiosity, as I wonder if this was what was in those ruins where Pedagogus took Rudius, or had Rudius go to do the baptism. Because remember, there was that tub, and there was all these things that seemed like they were dismantled or not working anymore. It makes me wonder if this is a place where they kept that. I kind of wonder. Like, this is like this little storage place for all this equipment. Of course, it could have been where the floating fortress was too. He could have went to where the floating fortress used to be at. Either way, this is something that they indicate later on is Laplace's. It bears repeating, the man was an idiot. You've got this at this point. He didn't stop to think of why this armor had been sealed away, why someone had hid it here. It was a height of arrogance to call himself the Demon King of Wisdom. Demon King of Stupidity would have fit him much better. Yeah, right here is, I guess, the point which, in his mind, of course, he's telling the story, that he thinks this is the point which this is the stupidest decision I ever made. This is literally Rizurd's point. Here is Rizurd's moment. This right here. Which, yes, is kind of interesting that later on, we have this right here, which is indicated to be created by Laplace. And it makes him go crazy. It infuses him with strength and makes him go crazy. Then what happens later on, after he's split technically, during the Laplace War, that same Laplace makes these spears and gives it to, Rizurd and all of his men, and that makes them go crazy. Everything that Laplace makes people go crazy. He's just experimenting, making things that make people go crazy. Oopsie. But honestly, earlier I was considering that this was the same armor that Aldebaran wore. The same golden armor. It could be they were both created, and Aldebaran was just told by the man god how to go find one of Laplace's prototypes. But I would think that if it is the same one, Badigadi right here would have said he found the armor, the same armor that Aldebaran wore, or it looked like Aldebaran's armor. But this is indicating that at this point there was more than one, or at least they're not the same. The man followed the man god's instructions and released the seal binding the armor. The seal was rather complex, but appropriately for a self-proclaimed Demon King of Wisdom, removing wasn't all that difficult. Once he removed it, he donned the armor and lost control. The armor was indeed powerful. It was imbued with such a surplus of mana that it had developed a consciousness of its own. Not that the man noticed this at first. He was too drunk on the power that poured out of the armor and into him. He was convinced that with this, he was able to take Aldebaran down. Again, that's the interesting thing. This is giving him mana. Again, the assumption here is that this is a magic armor similar to Rudius, because every time they talk about Rudius's armor, like with Orsted and the man god, they all just go, oh, it's just like the fighting god's armor. It's just like that armor. You're literally creating the same thing that was in history that was used before. But, again, with Rudius's armor, it has always been him feeling it. These are basically layers of earth magic that have etchings on it of magic circles, and he is feeling that magic circle to produce an effect. With this, it's a golden armor he puts on, and it's infusing him with a surplus of mana. It was imbued with such a surplus of mana that it developed a consciousness of its own. It's got its own source. That's interesting. What did Laplace, if this is Laplace's armor, what did he figure out that it would allow it to be infused with that mana already? Is there a crystal? Is there an amplification spell or something like that in there? Or was it always pulling from Badigadi and Badigadi just didn't know he had that surplus? I think that there is a tech in here that even Rudius himself is going to be probably intrigued to figure out. It's something that will allow Rudius to use Mark 1 without having to worry. I'll butcher that Aldebaran and then slaughter the rest, he thought. If it's not obvious, he was immediately thrown out of his right mind. The man was normally useless when it came to battle, but he found himself driven by the thirst for it. He moved as swiftly as the wind. He leapt down from the behemoth of a mountain, crossed the valley, the blizzarding meadow, 3 more mountains, 5 rivers, and 10 forests. He routed the enemy army and returned at last to his beloved side. I made it, he thought. The woman he adored was still alive. She had fought. She was beaten to the cusp of death, but she was alive. Who was it that she had fought against? This might be difficult to explain, but it was not actually Aldebaran who stood opposing her. In a certain sense, the opponent was the same as Aldebaran, but not exactly. You see, the human known as Aldebaran, the Golden Knight who appeared in the initial battle that changed everything, was already dead at this point. The enemy who stood against them was the demon god Laplace. Demonic dragon god Laplace, if you want the full title. Our protagonist knew of him. Demon god Laplace lived a secluded life in the distant mountains, only occasionally descending to the village below to teach people martial arts. He was a mild-mannered individual whom the immortal demons had long warned their children and their children's children not to contradict. That was really all this man knew of Laplace. This Laplace was trying to kill the woman our protagonist loved for some reason. Had the man been in his right mind, he might have paused to consider what motivated the dragon god, at least demand an explanation. He could have used his intellect to talk Laplace down, to avoid combat completely. Alas, the man's bloodlust overcame him. When he saw his beloved was wounded, fury seized him. The man let out a roar of a kind that had never escaped his throat before or since, then flung himself at Laplace. The dragon god was taken aback. Of course he was. His opponent wore an armor he was sure no one would ever find. Worse, no demon eye could perceive him. The man's title of demonic dragon god was not simply for show, however. He was a lone surviving king of an ancient dragon race, a person whom the man's own people dared not to oppose. There's a lot of oddities about this whole situation. Again, the very beginning of this is indicating that he comes back, and again, this is obviously was all intended by the man god for this to pull off, because again, he lasted at the very end. He wanted this to happen. The oddity here is, what is the dragon god doing there? It indicates that he came there and the dragon god is above Kishirika's body and that she has fallen, but she's not dead yet. I'm wondering if this is causing him to see it. Like, he has gone nuts, and in his mind, he came back there and he believes that the dragon god Laplace is going to kill Kishirika. That right here, Kishirika's just fine. She's just talking to Laplace. And then when he comes there, he's like, you're going to kill her, and he just attacks her. That's the only thing that can kind of feel with this situation. Because, yeah, he even says, if I was in my right mind, I was asked what's going on. Like, this guy doesn't seem like he would do this, but in his mind right now, he's doing it. That's the only thing I can think of. If it's not in his head, and Laplace is attacking Kishirika, that's the question mark. Or is Kishirika harmed and Laplace protected her and saved her? Like, somebody else was killing Kishirika, and Laplace came there to help her. Either way, yes, this is all intended, obviously, by the man god, that he would come there, and either way, either situation would attack Laplace. If the man had faced Laplace with his regular strength, their battle would not even last a few seconds. In fact, with the first attack, the dragon god had managed to chop off the man's arms and behead him as well. Had the man not been wearing the suit of armor, it would have ended here. Had the man not been an immortal demon, it would have been over in that exact moment. Those are mere hypotheticals, because the man was wearing the suit of armor. He was an immortal demon. New limbs sprang forth from what remained of his main body. The armor automatically repaired itself. Pretty crazy. It forced the man's body to move, to fight, even as his consciousness was half gone. It was a fierce battle. Yeah, this makes me believe this armor is more built like the automaton, like the one they found in the mansion. Like, that was all like that same concept there, just made into an armor. This thing has a mind of its own, that if something inside of it is threatened, it will attack. So even for Laplace, even though he built it, this thing's going to attack him. And it's interesting that they're kind of putting the idea that he took it over there and sealed it away. Like, this was supposed to be put away. And that does make sense why it has a seal on it, something that probably keeps it from moving and running around. But it's interesting. If Laplace miscalculated anything, it was that he never imagined someone besides his chosen donning the armor he had himself created. The man had no way of fighting, but the armor did. It had trained with all sorts of weapons, had imitated many different martial arts, could analyze the flow of battle. It possessed a repertoire of over 1,000 secret techniques, and was able to select whichever was the most optimal for the situation. Among its secret techniques were, of course, some that the demonic dragon god had spent many long years creating himself. Ironic, right? Again, the assumption here is this is something that he created for the sake of probably going after the man god. Like, this is some crazy thing that he was building and infusing all this magic into. Like, this is literally the technique god that he's creating. He's creating a technique god that's going to infuse with all this stuff that he could probably someday give to Orsted. Get in this thing, Orsted, and go kill the man god. That's the assumption here. But this is obviously all painting this as, hey, by the way, this is what Badigadi is going to be wearing in the next volume. It sucks. I hate all this stuff. It's going to be freaking... this kind of makes me believe that it's going to be Badigadi and Rudius one-on-one. A fight between magic armors. I have no idea what Laplace must have been thinking to develop this technique, but he come up with one that was incredibly fatal to himself. When used against him, it split Laplace in half. The man had defeated the most powerful opponent in the world and protected the woman he loved. Wonderful. What a happy ending. Well, actually, the story continued. But let a man dream a little bit. Why wasn't it over? Because the man wasn't done after he'd bested Laplace. The armor had overtaken his consciousness, transforming him into a monster controlled entirely by his own bloodlust. By the time the man came to once more, he had already driven his sword through the very heart of his beloved. He had no idea why his consciousness had returned. Perhaps the woman had used the last of her strength to return him to his senses, or perhaps the irrevocable act of plunging his weapon into her had produced such a shock that he'd come back to on his own. Before I get too far here, it is very curious that he is pointing out specifically, I had no idea what Laplace had been thinking to develop this technique, but he came up with one that was incredibly fatal to himself. When used against him, it split him in half. This is indicating that, okay, this thing has a crazy set of techniques, all these attacks, all this stuff, and it's all infused into this armor. But one specifically splits him in half. Why would he create that? Why would he create that? Now, there's two theories here. One is that he wanted to create an ability that would split himself into two because he wanted to create two of himself. Or, again, going back to the theory before, if this is created for the sake of fighting the man god, what are the chances that there's a thought here the man god needs to be split in half? Is there a knowledge that he has that the man god himself needs to be split? And it just so happens because the man god caught on to this first, had him essentially through proxy, it ended up used on him. Not the man god wanted him to be split, because he still wants Laplace dead, even after they split. Even though you could make an argument that him now split is more easier to kill. Because again, before, this is the demonic dragon god. This dude is somebody that even his own people don't mess with. He's that powerful. But this was enough to split him to be killed. Still interesting though. But no, him here snapping back into it. Again, another parallel to Rijerd. Same thing happened to Rijerd. Got this thing, made him go crazy, killed his people, and then who woke him up? His son. His son snapped him out of it. Regardless of how, it was too late. The man had killed his beloved with his own two hands. Ugh, he whispered, his voice not even forming coherent words. All he had ever wanted was to protect this woman. The woman was different. She laughed, in spite of the circumstances. In spite of being betrayed by someone that she trusts, she just laughed.
You haven't changed. Still the same old puckered face. Such a boring man you are. Laugh.
Huh?
No matter what happens, just laugh.
But you.
I don't mind. You are too serious for your own good. Too sour-faced. Always holding up in your room. Never drinking any ale. Never sleeping. What's so fun about that? Belt out some laughter. Sleep with some women.
Women?
He shook his head.
But I am in love with you.
Fa-ha-ha-ha. What are you saying? Then you should try to be more cheerful. Do that and I'll marry you.
Yes, I'll do my best.
All right. In our next lives, I'll be your betrothed. Fa-ha-ha. Fa-ha-ha-ha.
The woman laughed right up into the very end. Yes, she let out a hearty cackle, one that echoed around the two of them.
Fa-ha-ha. Fa-ha-ha. Fa-ha-ha-ha.
Light wrapped around the two as their lives faded from the world. Skeptical about the light? A little too pretty? Hardly. The rotten Laplace had made his body explode. And like it makes it all romantic, like, oh, light, it's all happy, everybody's... No, he blew up. we got blown to smithereens. And yes, literally the entire continent exploded. Like literally, like half of the current landmass disappeared. This massive explosion. That rotten Laplace made his body explode. That vindictive had thought about what to do if he were killed. He prepared a special art to use as he lay at death's door, one that would split the smallest particles of his body upon his death, the Laplace factor, which would spread out across all matter of the world, biding its time. Unfortunately for him, the man god would come up with a scheme to combat this. That's very interesting. It's indicating that this is the art that he created to allow himself to be reborn, which this indicates that in order for him to be reborn, in order to do this art where he spreads his factor amongst different occasions and has it come back together. He blew himself up. Like, he literally, he went, I am atomic. He's literally like, Badigadi's armors like beats the crap out of him. And the guy's like, oh my gosh, and he's down for the count. And this ability was used on that split him. And over here, Badigadi's like, oh crap, I just killed the one that I love. Like, is a knife and pulls it out. She's like, oh, I'll be your betrothed in our next life. And then literally over here, Laplace is like, I am atomic. And he just explodes. But it's indicating that he hit him first with a technique that caused Laplace to split into two. But at this point, Laplace then also split himself into his factors to be reborn again. We've already indicated before that the other part of him is unknown, like where he went. He just went off somewhere. But the demon god side of him blew himself up to be reborn. I don't know. That's weird. That is very odd. That's like it's almost like a chicken and egg situation that I don't know if I'm overcomplicating in my own mind. Split explodes himself. Very curious. Very curious. Because it's obvious that Laplace is there for the Laplace War. Like, this isn't like a very long time for him to come back. But it could be the aspect that he got split. That triggered the technique. It exploded. But his two halves at that point didn't die at that point. It just, the technique went off and it made this massive explosion. Which also makes me wonder if that explosion has to happen for that technique to happen. I would assume not, because, again, later on during the Laplace War, they take him down. They didn't mention this idea of it literally exploding on them. Very interesting. Either way, it's very, very interesting. But still, that's the massive thing that took out the entire area. Unfortunately for him, the man god had come up with a scheme to combat this. The secret technique the armor had deployed against him rendered his art incomplete. When his body was split, half of the mana intended to perform this technique was missing. It spun out of control, exploding a terrible, but not totalizing destruction. The immortal Laplace died. Okay, it was a little more complicated than that. He was split in half into the demon god and the technique god, respectively. But the being that called himself demonic dragon god Laplace was no more. Fragments of him lived, but the whole being, as he existed, was dead. As for our protagonist, even though he had died, he was still an immortal demon. It took some years for him to fully recover, but he did. Until then, however, he remained unconscious, lost in a fleeting dream world. It was there that he met the man god again. Very, very interesting way of kind of describing it. Again, I like this aspect of finally getting a first-person perspective of what happened here, and this idea that, yes, this is obviously what the man god was after. Because he knew that had that technique within the armor, it would split him and cause him to no longer be this insanely powerful being. As long as I can get him to be split, he won't be a threat to me anymore. As long as I can get rid of that nasty ability that he has to come back, it's all going to be great. I can do this stuff to really break away from him, remove his immortality, and make him killable. That was his end goal right here. I need to split those two and get rid of what is this big threat to me. Which again indicates that, yes, this guy was devising a way to kill him. He wants to get rid of him. But it is kind of odd to kind of note here that, yes, in the wake of this massive explosion, even though he was split, in the wake of this massive explosion, he's still there. He's still there. But this indicates that the man god was trying to stop him from spreading the particles of his body at his death, the Laplace factor, to spread out across all matter of the world, biding him time. He wanted this secret technique to go off in order to stop that, to render it incomplete. But based on what Orsted knows, eventually he does come back. So he does use this. But I guess the idea here is that at least now he's split. At least now it's the demon god and the technique god and not one being that will come back. At least now it will only be the demon god that will eventually come back. Whatever is with the technique god, who knows? But yes, this does technically finally kill off my theory that I've been for the longest time believing that Badigadi in some way could be the technique god. But yeah, this is where he met the man god again. Hee hee hee, ha 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 ha. The man god snickered at him mockingly. Demon king of wisdom, how ridiculous. You danced in the palm of my hand and killed the woman you claimed to love. You're nothing but an empty-headed puppet. The man god knew from the start. He knew that when the man retrieved the armor, that he would fight Laplace, lose consciousness, and kill his beloved. He coaxed our protagonist into trusting him. He manipulated him, all knowing from the very first how it would end. This is always so enjoyable. No matter how many times I do it. It's the best feeling in the world, getting to see the idiotic look on your face right now. I wanted this all along. The man god humiliated the man. Well, you see, I don't think I'll use you again, but I wish you a long life all the same. Oh, demon king of stupidity. That was the last thing the man god said to him as he disappeared. Ugh, and again, these people, they still like this. They still do things for this idiot. I don't get it. I don't get it. Again, embracing the demon king of stupidity thing. Cut forward to the present, apparently.
And now you want me, a demon king of stupidity, to lend you a hand.
Badigadi demanded, now that he was back in that empty dream world again.
Yep. Well, see, you're an immortal demon king, unlike the rest of them. Your lady love is still alive, and you're enjoying your life right now. No? You don't hold a grudge, do you?
You have a point, but this time, the story might be different. Maybe our protagonist and his lady love just disappear forever.
No, come on. That won't happen. I'm in a bind. I wouldn't screw you over in a situation like that. I'll even apologize. Just lend me your power, will you? See how sincere I am?
The man god, the being that was neither man or woman, not even corporeal enough to have distinguishing features, bowed his head. The gesture was casual, carrying very little sincerity at all despite the man god's insistence. But it was most definitely an apology. It has no sincerity, but it's still an apology. The man god hardly seemed to type to say sorry. Given that only he cared about degrading people, it'd be expected for him to brag about his exploits, certainly, but apologize? Out of character. And yet here he was, bowing.
What do you plan on doing if I don't lend you my strength?
Then I'll die. Not immediately, but in the distant future.
The man contemplated. Yes, the man god had deceived him. Following the man god's advice had caused their invasion of the humans to proceed at a faster pace, awakening the sleeping lion amongst them. Later, the armor possessed the man and caused him to kill the woman that he loved more than anything in the world. The man god had toyed with his devotion, making a mockery of him. He knew the man god must have known what would happen, must have foreseen the look of despair on the man's face, the pathetic sight of him sobbing as he lost it all. He laughed as if it were a game to him. He should have resented the man god until the end of his days. But the proud Demon King army was no more. The man was no longer a tactical advisor. He was nothing more than a lone Demon King. That's interesting. Again, because this is one of the struggles that I'm obviously having with this chapter is the process in which Badigadi eventually comes to saying, okay, I'll do this. Right here, it points out, okay, what are you going to do if I don't help you? I'm going to die. Just at some point, I'm going to die. It's plain and simple. He's being very honest. I'm sorry about this whole thing. I don't think he's really honest with it. This is literally the man god. I don't really see him having I don't think he's apologetic for what he did to Badigadi. He's literally just apologizing because he needs Badigadi now. He could have contacted Badigadi at any point and said, "Hey, dude, sorry about that. I don't need anything. Just want to say sorry." He doesn't care. He's apologizing to get Badigadi's favor here. Now, right here, Badigadi is going through the list. So I followed, he basically deceived me. I followed his advice. We were able to invade the humans quicker than normal. Because again, he said before that they were very slow. They had patience. They just kind of chilled, and that allowed the humans to rise back up and come back and return fire. But through using him, he was able to push the demon army to attack faster and was able to take them down and push them to the corner. And then he nudged him into getting the armor, and that caused him to lose everything. But let's be perfectly honest. He deceived him in a way, but in actuality, he just fed him what he wanted. I just gave you what you wanted. Yeah, did it serve me that you were able to take down something I needed to take down? Yeah. But in the end, it's still Badigadi's choice. That is sort of one of those oddities about how the man god works. The man god never makes somebody do something they don't want to do. The man god just tells them to do things. Now, it's always a massive question mark whenever it is a favor. Do me a favor. With Geese, do me a favor. That's when it goes downhill. Rudius, do me a favor. Badigadi, do me a favor. that's always when it's for his own self-interest. Now, yes, you can argue that with the case of Aldebaran and going to get the armor, it was really, I need a favor from you. That's when it was finally Badigadi begging for something from him, and it blew up in his face. And that is technically a point which it would be leading it into it, that obviously the man god knew this was coming. He pushed Badigadi over and over again. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. He kept feeding Badigadi over and over and over and over again until it got to that point where he can finally raise up the hero that will push Badigadi back. And he knew that he can get him so cornered that he would do anything he wanted. Again, that was that last thread. That was that last thread he needed. It's very interesting to kind of get a sense of how the man god works, where the similarities are between each of these individuals, and where the differences. I did help you with that, man, if you'll remember.
Yes, I am grateful for that.
See? That advice had not been given to Badi directly, but rather fed to him through someone else. A stranger had offered him 2 bits of information, both of which led in a promising direction. It was only afterwards that the man thought to ask the stranger how he'd gotten that information. They answered, "This god I saw in a dream told me to inform you." The man's expression had turned bitter upon hearing that. Regardless, the man was grateful. That advice had allowed him to help both a tribe of demons who had once resided in his region and a hero they idolized. The latter had looked so happy that he was reunited with them. The man would not soon forget the look on his face. I'd have to go back and look at a lot of the old stories. I'm very kind of curious. Off the top of my head, I'm drawing a blank right here. Right here, it's indicating there is a tribe of demons in a region and a hero that they idolized that he needed help, that they had to help out. And again, I think this is what Geese had. Which, how that connects to the massacre that happened, that's the massive question mark. It just feels like it has to be the same thing because they're both brought up in the same damn chapter. That how Geese lost his family was giving some information to somebody. And right here, some crazy bad stuff happened that involved information being given. So it has to be the same. But it's definitely not similar in how the results are. Right here, Badigadi was able to help a tribe of demons and the hero they idolized. And over here, it was literally, it ticked off this demon king, and the demon king destroyed everybody. Now, yes, did Badigadi enact this killing? Obviously not, because they mentioned that the demon king that killed Geese's tribe was taken out afterwards. I don't know. This is all weird. Or maybe possibly the information itself led for them to get rid of that demon king, and thus this group was happy. I don't know. I'd have to look back in the stories of the past, and there's probably a mention of this hero. The latter had looked so happy when he was reunited with them. When the hero that they idolized was reunited with them, the man would not soon forget the look on his face. Oh, is that Richard? I did help you with that man, if you'll remember. The advice had allowed him to help both a tribe of demons who had once resided in his region and the hero they idolized. Is it Richard? Because Richard was like their main warrior. Like, he was the captain of his group. Helped him reunite with the demon tribe that once resided in his region. It's Richard. It's Richard. And I wonder if that was way back there when Badigadi confronted Richard in front of Reese's house. He probably had a dream that night, told him, hey, this man god knows where your tribe is. Because again, Richard is looking for his tribe. Oh my god, this is totally it. This is totally it. And it was all the man god's plan to get him over there and have Rudius find him. Everything is the same. It's all linked together. Way back here, when Richard was still in front of Rudius's house, the man god told Badigadi to go to that house and tell Richard, I know where your tribe is hiding. The tribe that used to reside in my region, the Superb tribe, that tribe is now in the Northern Territories over here, chilling in the forest, hiding away, and I know where they're at, Richard. Now, I don't know why they'd look like that. He probably told him later on. I don't think it probably was at that point that he told him. But I wonder if that was why Badigadi responded that way when Rudius came out of the house. Badigadi already knew that Rudius was involved with the man god, but I wonder if at that point Badigadi was connecting everything as to what was to come up. That informing Richard about where his family or his tribe is. Oh, this is getting way complicated in my brain. I wonder if he knew Rudius was going to be somehow deeply involved with the man god, and this is why he's being told, is because Rijerd is involved with Rudius, and this has to be connected somehow. That I'm getting involved in another plot. By the way, I feel like that at that point he was probably told by the man god to tell Rijerd, and that would be, again, spoiler from the end of season 2, probably when they were leaving, was for Badigadi to show Rijerd where his tribe is. And right here is that. Both the tribe of demon that once resided in his region, the Superds, and the hero they idolized, Rijerd. The latter looked so happy when he was reunited with them. Rijerd would be extremely happy to finally find his tribe. The man would not soon forget the look on his face.
Damn.
So, come on, please.
The man god entreated, bowing his head. The man continued to consider the issue. Even though the man god had done him some small service, it could not erase some of the unforgivable sins he committed. Now that's the interesting thing. For Badigadi to see Rijerd being reunited with the Superds as a small service, like something that would benefit him, is interesting. Like, this is something that he did like doing. He liked seeing Rijerd back to his people. It does sort of indicate this idea that even though what happened with the Superds, Badigadi himself, if again this is Rijerd we're talking about, that Badigadi himself, despite everything the Superds did, he still loves his people. He still loves the people that resided within his regions. He still wants to do things for the people that resided in his region. I still want to see him reunited with the Superds, even if they're not in my region anymore. Interesting. On the other hand, was there anything in this world that was entirely beyond redemption? Perhaps for other people, but he was an immortal demon. He hadn't known at the time, but the woman that he loved had a fate strong enough that death couldn't hold her back. I wonder if that's an aspect of destiny and fate in the idea that it's not necessarily that she's immortal, but it's an aspect of the destiny is so strong she just can't literally die. That would be interesting. The two of them had survived that miserable episode. It should be said that, had the man been younger, he would have dismissed the man god's request immediately. If anything, he would have aligned himself with the opposing side, hoping to get revenge for all the pain and humiliation he'd once suffered. He changed, however. The Demon King of Wisdom, conceited oaf that he was dead. The man had trained his body, laughing loudly, slept with women, got hammered, and slept with his body sprawled out, and taking as much space as possible, no matter who it inconvenienced. He had become someone truly deserving of the woman he loved. He was no Demon King of Wisdom. He was not so weak and pathetic. He needed to rely on the god's advice to protect his beloved. He was now the immortal demon king, Badigadi, master of Rikarisu, the town where the remnants of Kishika's old castle jutted upwards into the sky, and the king of the Bagoa region. He was not someone who held grudges or trifles. He was broad-minded and magnanimous. A puny demon with no strength whatsoever had challenged him, and he admitted defeat. On top of that, his sworn enemy had come to him to offer an apology as well. He had no choice.
Very well. If you are that insistent, then I suppose I will help you.
You mean it? Ugh, that's a relief.
With that, Badigadi had become one of the man god's disciples. I'm sorry, I don't like this. I hate it. I really don't. I don't understand the thought process. This is my second time reading through this, and I still don't get it. I can just whatever, and it's like the whole like eccentric family, the Tanuki foolishness thing, the foolishness of the family kind of thing. I can wash it off as that, but it doesn't make sense to the thought process line here. It's not clicking the way he's thinking about this. It doesn't make sense to me. He did something horrible to me, laughed in my face, blah, 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 blah. The man considered the issue. Even when the man god had done to him a small service, it could not erase unforgivable sins he committed. On the other hand, was there anything in the world entirely beyond redemption? Okay, I can follow you there. That makes sense. The idea of like, okay, he did something wrong to me. Again, I kind of mentioned earlier that there's an element here of almost putting yourself at fault as well because you accepted these things. You kept pushing. He just gave you the avenue to do it. And eventually it bit you in the face. But it obviously indicates that, yes, the man God intended that for it to happen. He wanted you to rush out there. He wanted you to beat them. He wanted you to get cocky. And then he's going to take it all and throw it down the tube. But here I understand as well. We are still alive. Me and my beloved are still alive. Now, I would argue I I've always got the indication, I almost got that feeling that I felt that Badigadi cared about his people, but that could just be, I think that was actually an inner thought process that Rudius had, that he cared about his people. And he wanted to attack Rajerd because he was mad about what he did to his people. But I mean, there is a side of here that could be dismissive to the idea that Badigadi might not care that much about his people. Now, it is counter to what he did for Rajerd, in that he was able to get Rajerd reunited with his people, if that's who that was. But there's still an aspect here that everything that he had them lead into caused the death of so many people. But you can argue as well that they were fighting that fight anyways. It wasn't like everything that went down was something the man god did. Again, you are your own devices. Again, the man god literally is sitting there and saying, you could do this. He's not doing it himself. He's not forcing anybody. He's just literally saying, you could do this. Again, it's Badigadi's own decisions. And they're going to fight the war anyways. But right here, he's saying, if I was younger, I would probably dismiss him immediately. If anything, he would have aligned himself with the opposing side. He's literally saying, I know what the man god did. It bugged me. It's not that he's beyond redemption or whatever, but it bugged me. If anything, I would have chosen the other side, hoping to get revenge for all the pain and humiliation he once suffered. He changed, however. The demon king of wisdom, conceited oaf that he was dead. He became what his beloved desired. Then why do you care about doing this? And then later on, he says, literally, he was no demon king of wisdom. He was not so weak and pathetic he needed to rely on the god's advice to protect his beloved. He was now the immortal demon king Badigadi, master of Rikarasu. All this stuff. He was broad-minded and magnanimous. A puny demon. Here's the thing that kicks me. A puny demon with no strength whatsoever had challenged him, and he admitted defeat. On top of that, his sworn enemy came and offered him an apology. He had no choice. Again, he establishes, I'm no longer my old self. I kill that old self. I am now what my beloved wants. One that will laugh. One that's magnanimous. One that's broad-minded. I'll accept this stuff. You want to talk to me? Let's talk. I'm open to it. I'm not going to be my old self that was always kind of like, would be yes, immediately saying no. And then a puny demon came to me and challenged me. And then my sworn enemy came and offered me apology. But the puny demon came to you because the man god sent him. The man god knew that he was going to challenge you and that you would play into it. He knew that you would do this, and then he could afterwards apologize to you. You realize that back here you acknowledge that everything went according to his plan for his amusement. And now here, you're acting as if Geese is working on his own accord. You know full well he's doing exactly what the man god told him. So don't add that into your equation. The Geese is there because he knew that he could trick you into it. He knew that you're playing into his hand again. But anyways, putting that aside, putting aside not fully connect. I mean, again, I understand what he's doing here. He's killing his old self and he's accepting a new life of not being so caught up on other stuff. That's literally what this is saying. Not that I really want to accept this is how I feel like this is too easy. I feel like this is way too easy. And it could play into something in the future where Badigadi pulls the rug out from underneath him later on. There could be a lot more to this than what it's showing here with Badigadi's decision here. Let's be, I'm going to be honest there and accept that. And there better be, because it gets worse.
So then, who is our enemy?
Our enemy is the dragon god Orsted.
Ah,
The man god added,
But the one we've really got to defeat is his underling, Rudius Greyrat.
the boy with a ridiculous maniple?
Badigadi had spent only a short year with Rudius. Kishidika had told him of a boy whose maniple surpassed even the demon god Laplace, and that garnered his interest. He was keen on meeting Laplace once his reincarnation had arrived. In the end, the boy hadn't been Laplace. He was simply possessed of incredible magical power. It was a curiosity, but the boy was otherwise unremarkable.
Bah! So the boy's become the dragon god's underling, has he? What could have happened to make him that stony man's errand boy? How amusing.
The man god shrugged.
Don't ask me. I got no idea.
I wonder.
So you say. I'll bet you deceived the boy and turned him into a vengeful demon, didn't you?
Well, it'd be kind of a pain to explain it all, but yeah, guess you're not wrong.
Respect the honesty at least at this point.
Bah! What goes around comes around then.
The man let out a hearty laughter, mocking the god the same way the god once mocked him. The man god looked particularly annoyed by the ridicule. Still, he had no choice but to swallow his displeasure. He's like, I'm not going to say anything. Body had agreed to become his pawn, so he had what he wanted.
No matter. Geese is the one coming up with the specifics. You just need to cooperate with my disciples and lure Rudius into a trap.
Bahaha. Yeah? You're not gonna fight him fair and square?
It's better to win without a head-on confrontation, if you can help it. Wouldn't you agree?
If he'd been the same man who'd called himself the Demon King of Wisdom, then he likely would have nodded without a moment's hesitation. However, he was now the Demon King of Stupidity, the immortal Demon King Badigadi. He was the type to let his opponents attack first, withstand the blow, then return it with a counter of his own to take them down. Reese would have called him something of a pro wrestler.
I don't like it.
Knowing how you are now, I figured you'd say that. You understand better than anyone else, though, don't you? That if you don't try to take on the Dragon God in a fair fight, you have no chance of beating him.
No chance whatsoever. Yep.
I don't think that's saying what I think it's saying, but I think it's saying something I don't think it's saying. You understand better than anyone, though, that if you try to take the Dragon God on in a fair fight, you have no chance of beating him. It's not the same Dragon God. Right? Right? This is like 4,000 years ago versus this time period that we're at right now that Orsted's in. That Orsted's in this little period right here. That war was big way back here. 4,000 years ago, I think it was, if I remember correctly. Maybe he's just talking about the status of a dragon god. You fought a dragon god. You know it's not easy. You know their techniques, at least some techniques they use, yada, yada, yada. Maybe that's what it's saying. No, I mean, I guess he could have ran into Orsted at some point. The man god went on.
That's precisely why I'd like you to head to a certain location for me and retrieve something.
I assume you don't want me to weave through the human army, pass through more than 10 forests, cross more than 5 rivers, climb up more than 3 mountains, pass through a valley of unknown depths, through a bristling meadow, and scale the world's tallest trees, would you?
No, nothing like that. You just need to cross one ocean. That's all.
After saying that, the man god smiled.
Of course. What I'm asking you to retrieve is something you're quite familiar with already.
Badigadi knew instantly what rested in the depths of the ocean, something that he should have detested with the whole of his being. But if they were going to take on the dragon god, never mind harbor any hopes of defeating him, then it would be absolutely necessary.
Fine, I shall do it.
Again, this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't compute in my brain. Again, I can pass all the other stuff. Like I can understand like this whole thing. He has no. Let's be truthful here. Badigadi has no attachment to Rudius or Orsted. He shouldn't care about killing Rudius or Orsted. He has no connection there. But what doesn't compute in my brain, and I can see him following that mindset of like, whatever, I'm magnanimous now, I'm having fun now, it's shrug it all off, I'm not going to be vindictive, I'm just going to take every moment for a moment. You need my help? Sure, this dude beat me, let's go, what do you need me to do? Bwahahaha. All right, cool, we're going to take this down. This should be the camel's back right here, if anything. Go get the armor that made you go crazy before and caused you insane amounts of trauma, enough to make you change your entire life. What happened with him and killing Kishidika right there changed his life. Now, yes, a lot of that has to do with the fact that Kishidika said, change your ways and become the man that I want, and then I'll be, your betrothed. Yeah, okay, sure. That was probably a bigger aspect of changing his life. But why put on this armor once again that is going to make you go nuts and cause havoc and you to possibly do something that you'll find a mistake again? That doesn't compute in my brain. Badigadi spent only a moment waffling about the matter before agreeing. He was the immortal demon king, Badigadi, after all. Kishidika, Kishidishu's fiancé. He wasn't so small-minded, he would sweat the details. He had agreed to serve under Geese if he could beat him in a drinking contest. He'd made a pact and gotten his apology, so it was fine. To a demon king, a contract was absolute. Perhaps that seemed superficial in light of how the man god was still a liar. But the fact was that he had agreed to this. If the man god wanted him to retrieve that detestable thing, bring it back, and use it to defeat the man god's enemies, then there was nothing to hesitate about. Again, this is like one of those aspects that kind of makes me feel... It sort of makes Badigadi's character just feel so simple. And that was kind of the thing that I was so fascinated with when it came to, like, Etoff, when it came to Kishidika, is these characters that are very goofy and weird and crazy, and then at some point out of nowhere just become very kind of sober, and they actually have like a deeper thought process they're actually going through and suffering with or overcoming, or again, they think more than what you think that they're thinking. This sort of simplifies Badigadi a bit too much. Now, again, it's through choice. It's sort of implying the idea that because of what Kishirika said in that moment, he decided to become very simple-minded, but it does kind of suck.
Bah! And you have no other advice for me?
Unfortunately, my vision counts as a kind of demon eye.
And there it is, kind of confirming it. There is kind of confirming it. And it says a kind of demon eye. A kind of demon eye. He doesn't really necessarily say it is a demon eye.
Unfortunately, my vision counts as a kind of demon eye. I can't see your future since you drank the anti-demon eye elixir.
Now, again, that sort of complicates that whole mindset of the three disciples concept. Again, the idea here is that those that are his true disciples are people that he has looked into their future for. And this indicates that that's not the case. Again, we're assuming it's Geese currently, Sword God Galfalion, and the North God. And now here is the fourth person that he's talking to. But he's not looking into his future. So this could be the indication that he doesn't necessarily have to see into their future in order to talk to them. He's just kind of following up with this whole situation to, finish it off. He doesn't necessarily see his future. So this is technically a confirmation that he can talk to multiple people, not just the three.
I cannot see your future since you drank the anti-demon eye elixir.
Aha, I see then. Good news for me. After all, life would be boring if you could see exactly where it ends. Bah!
Badigadi was boisterous and cheerful. The heartier his laughter, the more the man god's face puckered with displeasure.
I may not be able to see your future, but I can see another man's future. He's not as clever as you are, perhaps, but clever enough. And he can fight even though he's not physically strong. Follow his instructions.
Bah! You mean that scrawny man with a monkey's face? Very well, I'll be his right-man hand for you.
Excellent. So, Demon King of Wisdom, Badigadi.
No, I am that man no longer. I am the Demon King of Stupidity. The Immortal Demon King, Badigadi.
In that case, Immortal Demon King, Badigadi, I entrust this to you.
The man nodded vigorously.
Yes, you can leave it all to me. Bah! Bah!
Their business was concluded. With his own laughter ringing in his ears, Badigadi's vision bleached to white.
Bah! Bah!
One more bah. He watched the disgusted face of Man God with great pleasure, and even as his consciousness faded, his laughter did not. And that's it. And that is volume 23. Okay, a few things I want to cover before I forget here. Yes, I did acknowledge that it's implying the anti-demon eye elixir still is in effect. Interesting. Right here, unfortunately, my vision counts as a kind of demon eye. Again, I was jumping on the fact that, yes, that kind of implies the idea that the man god has a demon eye. Curious, a kind of demon eye. It could be that it just has a similar effect that's not necessarily the same. It kind of works similar, kind of getting into the more like aspects of the mechanics of it instead of just it being a physical thing of a fantasy world. But he's implying here that it's still in effect. That yes, Badigadi has not died. It said that the elixir is in effect until they die. So the idea of the immortal demon king, he has not died. Even though he got destroyed right there, he didn't die and that nixed it. He still has it. Now you can come to the conclusion that the person that Kishirika seeing with her all-seeing eye when she was looking at Geese or looking for Geese could have been Badigadi, but how would she be able to see him initially? I still think that was Man God, that she was able to see the Man God, but that does make sense that she very temporarily seen Badigadi right there, and that's why she came to the conclusion that, oh, this has got to have something to do with the Man God, right? He's talking to some random person over here. This guy looks a little bit shady. I wonder if this is all the Man God's doing. I don't know. I guess the idea here is it could imply the idea that even though he has this anti-demon eye elixir, that she still could have seen him very temporarily before he disappeared. But that would tip her off to, oh, that's got to be Body. He has that anti-demon eye elixir thing. But the other thing this implies here, it gets into right here, I cannot see your future since you drank that demon eye elixir. I see. Good news for me then. After all, life would be boring if you knew exactly where it ends. He's being cheerful and funny and goofy and stuff like this. But it's funny because it's almost like the man god doesn't like what he's saying right here. He's saying, I might not be able to see your future, but I can see the future of another man. He's not physically strong, but he's smart. Follow his instructions. All right, I'll follow his instructions. And he keeps laughing, and it's bugging the hell out of the man god. I like that it's still showing this idea that he's almost like agitating him. Like, man god's like, crap, what did I get myself into? And Bodyguard is like, yeah, I'm being the idiot that you want me to become. I'm great. I'm having fun. But there's almost a side of it that almost feels like there's an inkling in here where Bodyguard is saying, oh, so that means I can turn on you, you wouldn't know it. That means I can go off course and you wouldn't know it. You can't see me. You can't see where I'm going with this whole thing. It gives me a little bit of hope here. This little last part right here gives me a little bit of hope that Bodyguard isn't going to do what he wants him to do. And I think it really will be telling if Rudius does go there with Etoff, his sister, goes there with, yes, at least one of his nephews, goes there with another demon eye from Kishirika, there's a possibility that Badigadi will break this contract. It does beg the question of, is the contract for a Demon King, is the contract they make, is it absolute? Or is it just a train of thought? Demon Kings always fulfill these contracts, yada, yada, yada. Is it a physical thing that if you do not fulfill that, you will physically be harmed? Or is it simply just an unspoken rule, like you always fulfill these contracts? They always do. They always fulfill them. It's about pride. It's about respect. It's about honor. If I don't do it, then I never keep to my promises, to my contracts. Or it would be as simple as that, yeah, they speak to him and he goes, yeah, okay, never mind. Sorry guys, not going to do it. It is kind of anticlimactic, but there still is an element here that, yes, we could turn this entire fight into an aspect of that Rudius is simply, through with his experience with all these individuals, they choose to turn on the man god because they just choose to respect Rudius more. I don't think it'll turn into something like that, but that's still an aspect that could come up. Anyways, really crazy chapter. And again, like I said before, I love this stuff because, especially, mostly just like the backstory stuff, because it, again, is that aspect of taking this war that has been, which again was told way back in the second volume, and just ripping it up once again. Oh yeah, by the way, this stuff that you want to think is normal and how things went, nope, that's not how things went. That's not how things went. It actually went this way. Oh yeah, revisionist history. Oh, now let's show it from this perspective. Oh, things didn't actually go that way. It's crazy. It's crazy how broken this little time period of this war has been rewrote so many times as we went along this series. But yeah, I'm bummed out. We'll see, though. Obviously, again, coming into the next volume, we're going to have, again, Badigadi, Geese, Sword God, North God, the third, all facing off against, presumably right now, Rudius, Roxy, Edis, possibly Ghislaine with the second, and maybe Nina and Gina Brits. I really do feel like that is sort of a missed opportunity if they go and face the Sword God without bringing at least Nina. And I think with Nina comes Gino. So I think they too need to come as well. I just don't know why Rudius would come to the conclusion of going to seek them. Unless it's like a last-ditch effort. Man, I realize I don't really have much to work with here, and I'm going to face off against some strong people. Let's try this one more time. I think it may come down to the idea of, let's see if the Sword God came back, and maybe we can pick him up. Okay, not? Okay. All right, Gino, the new Sword God, can you help me out? I guess that can be how it goes. Anywho, I think I covered everything I need to cover on this chapter. Just a lot in here to digest, a lot of kind of mushing things around. I know I was like super negative on Badigadi's decision. Again, I understand for the most part why he makes his decision. It just kind of frustrates me a little bit. I kind of wanted there to be a little bit more to his decisions besides just, again, I want to fulfill this thing that I think Kishirika wants, which really does suck because what we get from really that previous chapter about Kishirika's perspective here, she doesn't like this. She doesn't like it, despite the fact that she told him to be like more goofy, laugh things off, don't hold all this stuff. It really does feel like he kind of took it the wrong way and he would fall into the man god's hand despite the fact that she doesn't want to get involved with the man god. She doesn't want him to get involved with the man god. She doesn't want to be involved with the man god, but she knows he will. And it almost indicates that, at least now I get a sense that she might blame herself for allowing him, or at least pushing him in a direction where he thinks that that's something that the man god, that he should do. And that sucks. That really does suck. But anyhow, that is volume 23. Another one down. Where does this one go in the tier list? Where does it go? I know for the longest time I was saying this is S tier quality. We're getting S tier quality. This sucker, if it keeps up how it's doing, like we started off with Sieg being bored. We have this whole question mark: is he Laplace? It gets into them going to Petagoose, feeling like Petagoose is gonna kill Sieg. It's getting into Sylphie and her struggles with everything that she had gone through in the past, and fearing that Sieg is going to go through the same thing, and ultimately coming to that really cool conclusion where she finally realizes the thing that she had built. That she built the wives and that structure in the home, and not realizing she can rely on it. She can rely on the people around her to help her. And yeah, going right into the whole, getting in the trial and the baptism, which is really cool. Petagoose himself being a super bro, a Papa Petagoose coming out of nowhere. That was really, really cool. Going right into Nanahoshi stuff. Freaking Rudius's letter that freaking broke me. Again, getting into Nanahoshi and possibly the conflict that she's going through, going right into Edis and the Sword Sanctum, going right into Edis and Saros and Philip and Hilda and Ghislaine. All that stuff was super freaking emotional. Getting back into Sarah and Soldat, bro. And then right into this whole crazy crap. And this crazy crap of just flipping that table over what we think what happened in the past with Aldebaran and the Dragon God and all that kind of stuff was super, super good stuff. But I don't know. With this last chapter, it kind of stained it, man. I have to admit, this whole thing with Badigadi, I don't like, and I think it ruined it. I'm just joking. I'm joking. S tier. S tier volume. We finally got another one to add to the S tier. Now, we'll say this is like the lowest of the S tiers, but that's not really saying much. It's like the other S tiers, this isn't to that level, but I really love so much about this volume. This is easily one of the best volumes of the entire series. I love to death. You guys know from my Mushoku Mondays for this freaking volume, I cried too many damn times. It was way freaking emotional, and gosh, it's hyped up. It's so great. Actually, I think the coolest thing about this, there's a few things that make this a great volume. One, there's a great variety. It's a very great variety of stuff. Now, there's no action, but it's the good stuff outside the action that I eat up. It's character development. It's world building. It's everything all in one. And it keeps moving. It's one of those great volumes where it just keeps moving to different things that I want to know about. It's traveling to places that I want to see. It's meeting characters and seeing characters that I want to see. It's getting into stuff that we've kind of put to the wayside. It's doing all that stuff perfectly, and it's so paced perfectly. And again, having so many very emotional moments that really define characters. That's what makes this volume so freaking fantastic. This is the stuff that I want. There's no crazy action stuff. Like, do we even have an action? I mean, we killed a bird. We killed a bird. We had one fight scene, and it's killing a bird. That's the stuff. That's the stuff right there. This is the stuff that I want. But anyways, easily one of the best volumes of the series so far. And it's so crazy because it's a setup volume. Let's be honest, this is a setup volume. It's set up, a good like later part of this is set up for the next volume. Honestly, it is, here we go. It's time. Let's do this. Now, granted, very little of it, maybe like 2 chapters of it's really set up for the next volume, but still, I can't wait. I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm looking forward to the same time. And I think it's because there's so much of like, who's really going to stick with this status quo? Who's going to stick with this? We'll see. But anyways, that is it for this Mushoku Monday. Cannot wait till next week when we get into volume 24. Hope you guys will join me for that, and I hope you guys are excited with me as well. But as per usual, greatly appreciate you guys' support. Everybody that dropped out for the premiere, hey chat, hope you guys are well. Hope you guys did well. Hopefully no bad chatters in the chat. Hopefully nobody getting slapped down. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it, and thank you guys so much for your support, your kind words, all that stuff. It means so much to me. You guys are freaking amazing, and everybody that supports channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I cannot express enough. Thank you so much. And again, shout out to the mods. Adrian, Earthly, guys, give them a shout out. Thank them for being a part of Mushoku Monday as well, because they are a critical part of Mushoku Monday. Let's be honest here. Without them in the chat, I can't be a part of it as well, but definitely give them a shout out as well. But until the next Mushoku Monday, y'all take care.
No, come on. That won't happen. I'm in a bind. I'm in a bind. I'm in a bind.
But I am in love with you. I am in love with you. Bah, woman. But I am in love with you.
And if it had, and if it exceeds it, and if it exceeds, and if it exceed,